There's a new exploit in the F1 Esports world that's just gone big on social media, and it's called the Unassigned exploit. But what is it and how big is the advantage? Well, I'm going to give it a go and find out. So this first came up when people noticed that the word unassigned was popping up on some people's OSD. Often it will come up only on the corner exit and only for a few seconds, so what gives? Well, this basically pops up when your primary input device switches from one device to another. If you see unassigned, it means that the game has switched to a device that doesn't have that particular button mapped. So it can pop up on the overtake button, the DRS button, or the MFD in the bottom right. You may also see a different button pop up instead of unassigned, but actually it's just the exact same thing. The game is just switching between whichever device is being used the most. So in the corners, this will likely be a wheel, but on the corner exit, it's more likely to be the pedals. So does this mean that every time you see this, the person you're watching is cheating? Well, not quite. All it means is they're using more than one input device. That could be a wheel and a pedals plugged in via USB separately, or a wheel but the player is using a keyboard or a controller to toggle other things, like the MFD or DRS. In theory, you could even use a wheel for steering, then a pad to control your gears and pedals, and it would pop up. So where's the exploit? Well, this in itself isn't an exploit and isn't a direct sign that the person you're watching is using it. The exploit comes when someone is using a wheel, but telling the game that at least part of the wheel is a controller or a keyboard. Let me explain. This video is sponsored by me. I recently launched a setup shop called VSE, Virtual Setup Engineer. It gives you constantly evolving setups on F1 24 for an incredibly competitive price. The setups are made by previous F1 game handling designer David Greco, who frankly comes up with some absolutely amazing setup concepts. You also get access to loads of data, including recently added DRS delta and ERS recharge rate. What's more, when you make any purchase, you get full access to my F1 23 setups as well. So if you're looking for the best F1 game setups, look no further. Click the link in the description now. So in the game, there always has been a slight input advantage to using a controller or a keyboard because of the very limited input control you have on those devices. So if you use a controller, you'll notice that you can turn fully into a corner, yet the game will only turn the wheel to the maximum permitted at any given speed. This means you'll, in theory, always achieve the perfect steering angle, where on a wheel, you need to find that angle yourself. So if you were to activate this slight assist on a wheel, you can see how there might be a slight advantage in that. But that's just one example. The steering assist actually isn't that useful on a wheel because it restricts one of the inherent advantages to being on a wheel in the first place, the free ability to turn exactly how much you choose. But there are a number of other inbuilt advantages to running a controller or a keyboard, and we will never truly know the full extent of those hidden assists. But they do exist, and they vary with each game. Last year, for example, I believe the handling model and controller settings got to a point that the controller assist was as low as it's been ever on the F1 games. This year though, the big handling changes, it looks like the assists have increased again, which is why all this is coming up now. So what we're seeing is high-end wheel players are starting to find ways to enable some of those controller assists when using a wheel, but without compromising their ability to have free control of the car. Now, I believe some people are configuring their pedals when plugged into their PC separately as a keyboard. Now, this can actually be achieved with a very simple game file tweak, or alternatively, there are programs out there like Joy2Key, which essentially allows you to customize your input devices. Now, these programs are not cheats in themselves. They're really designed to allow you to do things like use a controller in a keyboard-only game, or map a unique controller, like an old joystick, to work with modern games. So I thought I'd give it a go to see what kind of advantage we're talking about. I plugged my pedals in separately and told the game those pedals were a keyboard to trigger the inbuilt assists. Now, I am a mere mortal, but I have to say I found very little difference when I did this, and it was within a margin of error of a placebo effect. As you can see with my side-by-side, there really is zero discernible difference in either the traction, braking, or even a full lap while using this exploit. Now, I will say that I did feel like the car was a little bit more stable. It seemed to be slightly more reluctant to slide. But the differences that I felt were so incredibly minor that I really can't believe this whole thing has blown up as much as it has. Now, don't get me wrong, at the very top end, these guys are searching for hundreds or even thousandths of a second, so any advantage, no matter how small, will be pursued. And it may be that me being a mere mortal, I just couldn't feel the advantage, but believe me when I say, this one is very, very minor. But an exploit is an exploit, right? So we should all be rushing out with our pitchforks anytime you see the word unassigned on anyone's screen. Well, first of all, just because you see controls toggling around on someone's screen does not mean a thing. It might just mean they've got a set of pedals made by one manufacturer and a wheel made by another, so they're forced to plug them in separately. But they could both be mapped as a wheel in the game settings and thus be doing nothing untoward. And I want to speak about that, doing something untoward. Even if someone is using this, is it really wrong? To my mind, there is absolutely nothing wrong with doing something like this. It's just simply smart. Every top-end professional driver's job is to maximize the tools at their disposal to get the best result possible. That obviously includes driving and car setup, but it also extends to just about everything else you can think of. What about graphic settings and finding the optimal FPS? Rig positioning that allows you to be as precise as possible with the inputs while remaining comfortable. What if someone found some less draggy tarmac off the normal racing line? Should that be banned? To me, it's a sports person's entire job to find the fastest way to the finish line, and I don't see this as any different. It's just like the double diffuser or the F-duct. Sure, the rivals that missed it weren't very happy and they tried to protest, but ultimately, it's just smart engineering. Now, of course, where the line is firmly drawn is in the rulebook, which is where grey areas like this can be clearly defined. I had a look at the F1 Esports rulebook, and they do not allow any kind of file changes or extra programs or anything like that. But they do allow you to configure changes to button mappings and input device settings. So if you found a way to make the game think your pedals were a keyboard without any external modding, you'd be completely in the clear, even at a LAN event. But even though I personally don't see anything wrong with it, I can see that some people might take a different viewpoint and view it as cheating. So what can be done? Well, the problem is this isn't a bug. It's not something wrong with the game. It's actually working exactly as intended. The game isn't going to remove the ability to easily switch between input devices just because 0.01% of players have found a way to use this to their advantage. They also aren't going to remove the ability for unknown devices to be mapped to the game. The only thing they should change is to develop a handling model that needs as little controller assist as possible. But fundamentally, it's an impossible goal. A controller or a keyboard is never going to have the precision of a wheel, and the game has to be both accessible on those devices and ideally have as much performance parity as possible on those devices too. So really, as is often the case with F1 Esports, we're seeing a bit of a storm in a teacup. Are people using this exploit? Maybe. Is it a big advantage? No. Should this have all remained behind closed doors with nothing but a minor amendment to the rulebook? Probably. Anyway guys, hope you found this video interesting. Please drop a sub if you haven't already and I'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.